My guest today is Girish Redekar. Girish is the co-founder of a company called Sprinto. He built Sprinto to help enterprises with their data security, data privacy, and compliance needs. And we go into it in detail during the podcast, but we talk about things like SOC 2 compliance, ISO, GDPR, TCPA, and the list goes on and on. So this is his startup. He's the co-founder, and he's actually a technical co-founder. So you might be wondering, why have I invited a engineer or a technical founder onto the SaaS Sales Players podcast? Well, there's a couple reasons. Number one, I thought Girish could give some insight into how enterprises and companies are dealing with data privacy and data security. And I think if you're going to sell in 2022, whether you're selling at a commercial or mid-market level or to the enterprise, more than likely you're going to run into a request for data compliance and data security. So I thought it'd be helpful to pick his brain a little bit on some of the need to knows when it comes to helping your clients around their security protocols. The other reason I wanted to have Girish on was I felt like it would be valuable to ask him about some best practices for selling to a technical buyer. Many of us out there, and I think for the most part in this day and age, almost any software is now going to require the buy-in from a technical evaluator or technical champion inside the company. And usually that's someone who's in engineering, DevOps, or IT. And so I thought it'd be interesting to ask Girish what he sees as some of the habits of the best sellers when it relates to selling to a more technical persona, which can differ a lot from selling to a business or operations persona. So with all of that said, I want to welcome Girish to the SaaS Sales Players podcast. All right. We are live. Girish, welcome to the SaaS Sales Players podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jesse, for having me.
And we were talking off air. It's after midnight your time. You're based out of India. So thank you for joining us on I guess it's early Saturday morning at this point, at the time of recording. So we really appreciate that.
No problem. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So where I usually like to start is tell us a bit about how you got started in your technology career. I want to preface too the conversation to my listeners by saying, Girish is the co-founder and technical founder of Sprinto. Is it Sprinto or Sprinto HQ?
No, it's Sprinto.
Sprinto.
We have Sprinto.com.
Sprinto.com. Awesome. You guys got the .com. So
yeah.
One of the reasons I was excited to have him on the show today is, well, there's a few different reasons. One, the product that Sprinto is working on will help sellers as they have conversations with large enterprises, and it deals with data security and SOC 2 compliance. But the other thing is, I thought he could help us understand as sellers some best practices for engaging and building rapport and presenting to a technical buyer, a technical champion, a technical decision maker. So I want to start with your story, your background. Tell us how you got to where you are, but then I want to dive into some of those topics that I think my listeners will really appreciate your perspective on. So with that, tell us how you got started in this crazy business of tech.
So I think it was very incidental for me. Incidentally, I and my co-founder, we ran another B2B SaaS company before this, and fun story here. I wasn't always a developer. Both I and my co-founder had to teach ourselves programming. When we did that. Yeah. So we sort of learned how to build a product professionally and so on and so forth. And among other things, my previous SaaS company was actually it was a bootstrap company. Among other things, meant that, us co-founders had to get our hands dirty with pretty much all aspects of running a SaaS business. So in the beginning, it was, writing code and, building the product. And later it was around marketing. And then eventually it was around sales. So that was my first foray into sales. We were just hustling to get our first customers. And that's how I got into SaaS sales. Fast forward to today, that was almost a decade ago. Fast forward today, in my second SaaS company, I primarily almost exclusively do sales now. But yeah, I did write some code early on, but this is what I do now.
So tell us what were some of the things in your first go round in the SaaS world when you did have to pick up the sales hat and put that on? What were some of the things that surprised you about the role of selling to businesses?
I think it was very unnatural to me, to put it very simply. I'm happiest when I'm writing code, and I'm also naturally an introverted person, so it wasn't something that came very easily to me. I guess the most surprising thing to me, though, was that it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I learned a little bit about myself. If I used to think of this as a difficult conversation, but I realized after doing a few of those that if you actually really just look at it as in terms of trying to help a prospect into something that they're already going through, it just becomes a lot simpler conversation. Not all of them turn out to be like that, but I got my fair share of such conversations, which helped me increase my confidence in in doing what I'm doing. So I guess it became problem solving of a different kind. As engineers, we are just we tend to be better at troubleshooting and problem solving, but this was just a different way of looking at it. And I think once I got that lens on it, it just became a little easier for me.
What were some of the things that you guys did, some of the tactics or plays you ran to get those first customers? I know a lot of my listeners out there are working as the first, second, third, or fourth seller in a SaaS startup. And as you know, having built one before and currently building one now, when you haven't yet built a big brand and maybe you haven't, raised capital and they're especially bootstrapped, it's really hard to get the attention of a buyer when they have no idea who your company is. What were some of the things that you guys did, both in your both in your former SaaS role and with Sprinto to get some of that initial traction and get those first handful of customers on the platform?
That's a great question. I think early sales are the hardest. You get these, you're basically a nobody. They can't really trust you. You don't have the logos yet. You don't have referenceable customers yet. So you're sort of up against this wall. However, and you don't have the support structure in general, right? Like you don't have any case studies yet, and so on and so forth.
Right.
What I honestly, the only thing that's really worked out for me when I'm doing some of these early sales is get a little bit more consultative than what what we typically need to be, which means that you sort of go through a phase where you're trying to see if, what are the top 3 problems this person is worried about, and hopefully you are what you're selling is a solution to one of the top 3 problems. And then rather than thinking of your specific solution, you become a little bit more consultative than your solution itself. So you go a little bit over and beyond what your software itself might be doing. So I've tried that a few places. For example, like my current the product that we currently sell, which primarily helps salespeople. It primarily helps companies become security compliant with these things like SOC 2 and ISO and GDPR and HIPAA and etc. And what that typically means is that the person on the other side is struggling to go through a security due diligence. Now these compliances are a part of that thing. There is a lot more that gets involved. There are security questionnaires. There is a bunch of other stuff, etc. And it helps to sort of understand the overall picture and help them out a little bit on the other aspects, which are not strictly part of your product. And that sort of helps you get some confidence. And it's pure hustle right at the beginning. So that's fine. It doesn't have to scale, and it's okay.
Did you guys rely predominantly on emails or phone calls to get meetings that would ultimately lead to those first customers, or did they come from your network? What were some of the sources for the actual contacts that you made to get those first customers on board?
All of the above. It was a blur, honestly. Like we tried a million things. Some of them came through, and that's basically how we got through them.
Yeah. And so and a lot of these questions for me are coming from a place I spent some time as the first sales hire at a technology, or a SaaS, I should say, technology SaaS company. It was a SaaS platform, but the product was incredibly technical. My buyers were DevOps, and CTOs were sort of the final decision makers. And I always share, I like to share some of the ways that we got initial traction. I mean, first, the founders had a pretty good network. Both of the founders at this company happened to be part of what they call in Silicon Valley, the PayPal mafia. So that's, I think if you're in the first 50 hires at PayPal, you're part of the PayPal mafia. So I was fortunate there because the two co-founders were both PayPal mafia. And so they had a very massive network of CTOs that, lived all across the world. And, we had customers in Australia and, they had connections in Europe and in India and all over the place, Asia. And so I would tap those, contacts and connections first. One of the most creative things that we did in that role, though, was we created a dedicated Slack channel, and it was free. You could come in, and if anyone had a question about the specific technology that we were built on top of, so we were a SaaS that was built on top of Kafka, and you're probably familiar with like the data streaming language Kafka, and there was all these people out there that had all these questions about how to build on Kafka. And so we opened up a free Slack community. People started coming in, and as the sales rep, it was fun because I was in the Slack all day. I'd see people ask questions, and then we'd confirm where they worked. And it was like, oh, I work for, some big hotel, or I work for a big bank or financial institution, or I work for this big tech company. And so I would then, sort of nurture those conversations and say, hey, our team was, here to help, but we'd love to show you the SaaS that we've built that's going to help you manage these Kafka resources. So anyway, that was one of the fun ways that's
a great idea. Yeah.
Slack channel.
Thanks for sharing that.
I'm also a big advocate of podcasting. I think if you can get an interesting podcast out there, the amount of people you can reach through this medium is incredibly huge. And at that startup, we did do a podcast. It was very niche because there was very few people that, necessarily tuned in week over week for the new episodes, but it still did, deliver a nice reach, and we had some inbound leads come from that. But I always love hearing stories about getting something off the ground, because I definitely realize how difficult it is when you're trying to negotiate that first customer contract. And, your product is not to the finished state or even really in a complete state at any point, at that point. And so it's always great to hear those stories.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Those customers are the hardest. There have been so many times where we've been asked for references, and honestly, we didn't have too many. And those people are busy themselves, so I wasn't sure. It's not like they wouldn't want to give us references. They just didn't have the time. So
yeah,
those are tough battles to fight.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Sprinto. You mentioned earlier that it assists, companies and essentially reps like myself, who often come up against the objection of, hey, are you guys SOC 2 compliant, GDPR? I'm trying to think of what some of the other security credentials are that one can earn. I mean, there's, I know SOC 2 is a big one, especially for SaaS, because it protects, the data security of the end client. Tell us what you guys are doing different. I'm sure there's several companies out there that do SOC 2 compliance, and give us an overview of how you guys are different and what we should be thinking about as sellers as we encounter these conversations around security.
Absolutely. So like you said, right, Sprinto just helps other SaaS companies obtain security and privacy compliances at 1/10 the effort. What that really means is that in turn, our customers are able to accelerate their revenue, close high-ticket deals, and pass vendor security assessments with ease. Now, the trouble with these things is that obtaining these compliances conventionally took months of CTO or CISO time. So if you're a smaller company, it's typically the CTO, and usually that person is probably one of the most slammed persons inside of the company. Like, they really don't have time to take on more. They rather build product and have very little time. So what we do is we automate a bunch of busy work that happens around these compliances, and consequently are able to get you there a lot faster. These compliances sound like a gobbledygook of acronyms, but like you said, sure, salespeople have heard of these, and they even dread these if you don't already have them, because it usually means that the deal is going to take a long while to close. So our simple value prop is that we help you get there a lot faster with a lot less effort, without you having to sort of derail anything that you've planned. Which means that your engineering team is more likely to pick this up than say that, hey, unless you're really selling this very high ticket deal, don't bother me about it. So that's roughly what Sprinto does. I think the primary way we are different than a bunch of other tools that exist out there is simply the amount of automation that is brought into the entire picture, and consequently the reduction in effort that happens. So Sprinto is a end-to-end software. We sort of not not only automate how you implement these programs, how you operate this program, but we have gone as far as actually automating the audit that's involved in running these programs. So that's the part that everybody hates. This is SOC 2 audit.
Right.
And we have gone to a point where, we sort of work very closely with auditors and sort of encoded whatever they seek in an audit into our software, which makes the audits completely seamless as well. So this, basically means that compliances such as SOC 2, which was only something that a resource crunch company wouldn't ever dare pick up, just becomes a lot more accessible. And that's the way we look at this. Our job is to make these compliances a lot more accessible to companies across various sizes, and even if you really don't have resources to throw at that problem yet, you can still get it done.
So it's automation. Is it built in the form of a SaaS model where it's a subscription base and you pay for this service year over year? Walk us through sort of the commercials or kind of the structure of the deals.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We are SaaS for SaaS. So we are ourselves a SaaS tool. It's annual subscription-based product. And the subscription price depends roughly on the size and complexity of your compliance program. So that's roughly it.
Yeah. And maybe for some, because a lot of my listeners are relatively new to tech sales or SaaS sales. Why is something like SOC 2 important for a large company or even a small company? What kind of things does that guarantee, or what kind of assurances does that give a big company or a small company?
That's a great question. So, let's, for the sake of it, imagine you're a SaaS vendor and I'm a SaaS buyer. I'm purchasing SaaS for my company, and SaaS fundamentally means that my data is on your servers, and I need eventually some assurance that you're going to keep this data safe and secure. It's natural for me to have questions around that. Now, what used to happen about a decade ago is these were concerns that were primarily, it's the Fortune thousands who would care about this a lot more as compared to the others. And if you're selling to a Fortune 1000 company, then you would get asked for these compliances or some sort of a security questionnaire or audits, etc. But what's really happened over the subsequent decade is that these demands have percolated downstream. So today, if you're doing 5-figure SaaS deals anywhere, you're more likely to get asked for these things, and I think the ceiling is always coming down over time. So you give it a few more years, and you're likely to get asked for these things as table stakes anywhere. So that's the germination of the problem, that fundamentally you are handling data on my behalf, and I need some assurance that you're keeping that safe and secure. Now, what used to happen in the past also is that each company would actually conduct audits with each of their vendors, and it's easy to see why that's unscalable, because I as a vendor means I need to go through an audit with each customer, and that just doesn't make sense. That's just a waste, because I'm exactly doing the same thing, or at least there's a huge overlap between things that I do with each of my customers. So the simplest way to think about SOC 2 is kind of like what SATs do, right? Like, instead of you taking like an examination with every school that you want to work with, or every college, you basically do that once, and that can be used across places. So that's fundamentally what SOC 2 allows you to do. Like, it's a single audit with independent trusted third party, which is AICP, a body called AICP, and then they help you they are the ones who can certify you that you are actually meeting the standards of security, and then you can use that across your customer. So that's quite simply the way that works.
That is a really great analogy, the SAT analogy. That's perfect. Which, you're not going to go around every school and take an individual test. It's better to just have one universal certification. So, I love that. Okay.
If you do any prospecting with LinkedIn, you have got to go get set up with Surf. That's SURFE. It's a tool you can use to add new contacts to your CRM system directly from LinkedIn in seconds. I'm using it every single day. I add contacts, follow my deals, keep track of notes, and it ends up saving me a bunch of time on prospecting and outreach, which means I can spend more time moving my deals along. The data is always 100% accurate, since I don't have to copy and paste all the fields over from each and every contact that I want to put in my CRM. Instead, Surf does that all automatically with just one click in about 60 seconds. The team over at Surf has put together a very special offer for fans of sales players There's a link down in the show notes, and you can use the promo code JWSURF5. Don't forget the E at the end of surf. That's JWSURF5 for 5% off your first year. Don't spend another minute doing things manually. Go get set up with Surf.
What would you tell someone out there who's listening, who's maybe working at a SaaS startup that's not SOC 2 compliant? Maybe they don't have, a GDPR, compliance in place, or what's the one? There's one in California. I think it's CCPA.
Yeah.
CCPA. What would you tell someone who's in that situation right now? Maybe they're trying to sell deals to other tech companies or even, non-tech companies. What kind of things should they be thinking about as they proceed in conversation with their buyers?
So it's good to get an early signal if this is going to be like a bottleneck later on, because that way you're at least buying yourself some time. And I think so. I've been in that position exactly. Like in my previous company, we didn't have SOC 2 for a while, and then we had to find a way to sort of circumnavigate the whole thing, and including things like, hey, we are on AWS, and AWS is SOC 2, and that cut it for a while, but then it didn't. So the honest answer is, beyond a point, it's going to be really hard to sort of navigate around that. So the thing that I would recommend there is that you need to have a plan in place to eventually get there, and then you could do some few tactics on a short-term basis. You could be a little bit more forthright about the security practices you run, while giving them, which could give them enough confidence without you having like a third-party certification like SOC 2. That's a good thing to do. And you could use some other tactics of that sort. But I think the simple answer there is that depending on the geography, the industry, or the kind of customer that you work with, if you're an enterprise first SaaS company, I'd say that, hey, get that done. I mean, that's like table stakes.
So yeah, and I mentioned that I was the first sales hire at a startup. I've done that a few times in my career. I've come in very early to a startup, and that is a huge challenge early on if you don't have that SOC 2 or some of the other ones, GDPR, CCPA, whatever it is, whatever the compliance is, it can kill your deals. So if anyone out there listening is in that position, point their technical leadership towards Girish and his team, and go check out Sprinto. So I want to shift gears a little bit because, and we talked about this a little bit before we came online. One of the biggest challenges that I've encountered in my career of selling, and I know my peers struggle with this, and I'm absolutely sure that my listeners struggle with this as well, is sort of the universal clash between engineers, developers, technical buyers, and your sales persona, which us sellers tend to be extroverts, not always. There's a lot more introverts in the business now, and I like to see more well-rounded personalities in the field. But historically, it's always been, hey, there's this sales rep that wants to sell me this technology solution. I know how to code. I know all of the, back-end systems. I've invested tons of time in understanding the technology. And now this guy or gal out there is going to come try to tell me what I should learn and what I need to know. And they're going to try to, take my money over something. So I'll take a step back here and say, I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas for anyone out there listening who is selling to DevOps or CTOs or IT buyers, or, anyone who's more technical in nature. And I think at this point, I have a theory that in most enterprise deals in this day, in 2022, most enterprise deals, someone technical is going to be involved, especially if it's, back to your earlier point, if it's a 6-figure plus deal. There's no way a company is going to write a 6-figure check or sign an order form for 6 figures at this point, unless either a developer, an IT systems, professional, or even in some cases, the product or CTO leadership, technical leadership. So what are some ways that sellers can, get a little empathy for the technical buyer, communicate better, sort of check their biases and some of those things? I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas around how sales can interact more efficiently with IT and tech.
Wow, that's
a big question.
And I'm not sure I know I have a good answer to that. But I have been a part of a few sales conversations on the receiving end where I was really impressed by the salesperson. So maybe I'll share a couple of tidbits on that,
Perfect.
like the things that went well. I think the couple of ones that stand out to me is the salesperson admits or is at least not trying to tell me, about the technical aspects of what I'm doing, but it started a little bit more, I would say, from first principles about what exactly am I trying to solve here. And just for context, I think the conversation is very different when a technical person is a decision maker versus when they are actually, just ensuring compatibility and fit, in which case you typically have like a solutions engineering team or something of that sort internally, and that's just about making sure that those are much simpler conversations, and you can just make sure that you're checking boxes and just giving them enough confidence. That's why I'm guessing it becomes a little bit more pertinent when the decision maker itself is a technical person. You're selling to a CTO or a DevOps person, and they are the ones who are actually going to make a decision. And I think it's known on both sides that, hey, you don't understand tech to the extent that I do, and I don't understand the product that you're trying to show me. So it helps to be cognizant of that and just get into the fact that this is what the product is really going to solve for you. And I honestly, that the two conversations that come to my mind, where I was really impressed with the salesperson, is that the person spent a lot of time just understanding the ground realities of the problem that I was trying to solve. And that was like an extremely, I would say it doesn't matter that I was a technical person, that these were just extremely, really well done discovery calls. And that to me is like the large part or the lion's share of what really does this better. And the person was actually ready in the next call for the specific things that they learned from me in the discovery call. So that to me was like a great way. It felt like they were actually listening. They went back, they actually got answers to some of the technical questions I had, and they just made sure that the first call is just for them to understand. So it was a great experience for me. So I actually felt like they were listening. They were candid about the parts that they didn't know, and they actually came back and gave me all the information that I actually needed to make a decision. So I'm not sure this applies specifically to developers, but this could be true for any sort of a technical role where I, as a person, we just may not know what the specifics of your job. I think the if I have to put out one single way of doing it, is like you do a really good discovery call, and you sort of make sure that you have enough ammunition so that you can go back and answer all the questions that the prospect might have when you do this. So that's one of the tricks of the trade that I think went well when I was at the receiving end of such sales calls.
No, so a lot of stuff to dig in there, and I certainly appreciate the specific story here. And something that I'll call out is just this discovery. You mentioned the importance of doing a good discovery session, or 1 or 2 or 3 discovery sessions, even if it's warranted. And I think you're exactly right. And in my experience working with technical buyers, the best thing you can do is not to try to outsmart or get overeducated and try to tell them what they should know or what they should be thinking about. I don't know that the whole challenger sales model works as well with technical buyers. What I do think works well, like you said, is listening, doing discovery, not being assumptive, coming in and saying, I'm not going to assume anything about your business or your tech stack, but I want to understand, what your challenges are. And then I want to take that, internalize it a little bit, but I'm going to then come back on our next call and we're going to recap that in a way that shows that I'm listening and actually understanding and really trying to be helpful here, versus just going through the sales motions and saying, all right, when do we get the contract signed, or how quickly can you get this done? So I think that's a very important point, discovery. One of the other things that I've always tried to avoid when I work with technical buyers is you never want to call someone's baby ugly, which is, a lot of times, especially in a fast growing company or a tech company, the technical resources of the developers or engineers have had to build something on their own, and it's solved a big problem for the business in that moment. But maybe you work for a SaaS platform that's shiny and new, and it's, more cost effective to come in and actually replace the homegrown system with the new SaaS system. If you're a rep at one of those companies, it's really easy to come in and say, oh, your homegrown system looks like garbage. You should be on XYZ tool. And you're discounting and just completely disregarding the possibly months or years worth of work that might have gone into coding a homegrown system. So I'm always very cognizant of that when I have those conversations. I never want to disregard or insult a homegrown system or call it ugly in any way, because I know that there's real work that went into that. And that might've been sleepless nights for an engineer. That might've been months worth of their, work and research and headaches and sprint meetings and all that stuff. So I always try to, take that into consideration. I think it's very common to have a SaaS rep come in and say, oh, that looks like crap. You should be using our SaaS. And I think it's very important to stay away from that tendency and just be mindful and aware and have that awareness that, there's a lot that goes into those things. Sometimes blood, sweat, and tears go into these kind of things. And so you want to have that situational awareness. And I think just empathy, realizing that, and then acknowledgement as well, that you likely aren't ever going to know more than this engineer about their tech stack, about computer science, about cloud computing, whatever it is. So if you can acknowledge that and come into the conversation saying, I'm also a student here, we're both learning from each other. Like you said, more, the rep knows more about the product that they're promoting and the value. The engineer knows more about their systems and their current stack. So how can we, collaborate here in an environment of learning and not one of assumptions, not one of aggression where, one person's trying to strong arm the other one into a deal. So very great points. And I certainly appreciate the specific insights there. Anything else?
I especially love your point about not calling the baby ugly. I've been there. There is a lot of context behind why systems get built the way they do, especially internal systems in young, fast-growing SaaS companies. I really love it. I'm glad you said that out. I'm going to steal it. I'll just put it there.
Yeah, that was one. So I was at a startup after the one I already talked about today, that we were very careful because our SaaS was kind of a new concept. It was a new category, and it sort of disrupted what was a status quo in the engineering world. And our marketing team and our tech leadership team, as well as our sales team, was very cognizant of not going in and insulting the existing way of doing things, because in a lot of cases it was work that people had put in. So that's where I picked that up from. But what else? I mean, have you any other stories you care to share about maybe interactions you've had, good or bad, with purchasing technology?
No, I guess I guess I haven't had any bad experiences. I have a lot of meh experiences, but there's the couple of good ones. I remember the ones we talked about, they were really well done. I think the simple fact of breaking calls into two parts, the discovery and the main demo, really allows salespeople to. So in one of those instances, the salesperson actually got a technical person on the second call. So that again shows that they are listening and they want to make sure that I get all my answers and they're prepared. Which kind of indicates that they're serious about this. So I think that to me is like an overall important way of dealing with any situation where you don't know, what's really going on the other side. So you do like an information gathering in one part, and then you sort of, you're prepared better on the second part. But that apart, I actually don't remember of any other anecdotes right now.
Yeah, that's all right. I had a question. I think it went away. What's your take on, and this is something else I've observed when I've worked with more technical buyers, especially in SaaS, a lot of, technical buyers want to actually put their hands on the product before they say yes or no and agree to signing a contract. Do you guys do that at Sprinto? And are you a pretty big advocate of a try before you buy, doing a trial or a pilot program or something where, technical reps can get in and test something before they buy it?
So I think I don't know if there's a blanket answer to that, but yes, there are specific scenarios where it becomes a lot more important for me to be able to try something out and do it. But it's a little bit of a nuance there. There are many classes of products where there is a little bit of an implementation phase before the product starts becoming useful in any way. So you have to be careful there about just giving out the product, because the person is going to come in, they don't really have as much time or cognitive bandwidth right now to try and figure out your product. So they're going to click around, browse around a bit, get frustrated, and then just leave on. So that's not what you want. I think pilots are relatively different. Especially you can do that in a paid pilot manner. Then what that ensures is there's seriousness on both sides. So you are sort of trying to get them converted eventually, which means if it requires an implementation, you are going to be putting that effort, getting them to a point where the product is actually useful and they can actually use it in a manner that would be representative of the day-to-day use thereon. So I think with that specific nuance, I'm always prefer getting your users, eventual end user, to try out the product. It may not always be possible, especially when long implementation cycles are involved or the product is naturally complex. But where possible, you should absolutely do that.
Yeah, awesome. So where are things headed for Sprinto from here? I imagine you're growing. Are you guys hiring sales? I mean, tell us a little bit about what the next 12 to 18 months look like for the company.
That's I mean, we are hiring. I and my co-founders, most of our time goes in hiring. So so that's probably the highest order priority inside of the company.
Right.
Please visit our website, sprinto.com careers. We're hiring across the board: sales, marketing, engineering, product and design, and then so on and so forth. So we are hiring across the board. The next 12 months seems like a long time away, honestly. So my immediate goal in the company is to sort of have the team together on all the major things that we're doing. We're currently in a state where we feel that we are constrained by our internal capacity more than anything else, which is one of the so-called good problems to have. Problems nonetheless that need solving. So that's where we are at. We're growing very rapidly, and that means that a bunch of things inside of the company are bursting at the seams, and you sort of trying to make sure that we do better than put duct tape there. So that's roughly the state here, as is with most fast-growing startups.
And are you? I should have probably done my homework on this before the session today, but are you guys bootstrapped for this business, or have you raised money?
No, we are venture funded from the get-go. We actually recently announced our Series A from Axel and Elevation Partners. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Congrats on that. That's awesome. Just kind of in closing here, any final thoughts for the sellers out there who are encountering, objections around SOC 2, who want to be better at selling to technical buyers? Would love any closing thoughts.
I would say, not worry too much about it. So the final tactic when none of this works, like you're not actually able to circumnavigate it, then the final tactic that I would say you should try and do is get it into a contractual agreement and buy yourself some time that, by the time this contract is for renewal or within 6 months of us signing this, we are going to get there. And then if you use a tool like Sprinto, you can actually still get there, within the time that you do. So don't try and make it a non-blocker. If it is already there, just get it added to the contract in some way. So that gives your customer some confidence that, hey, you're still serious about this, you're going to get it done. But there are like a few tactics like that you could use to get this done.
Awesome. Love that. Girish, how can my listeners get in touch with you directly if they want to get in touch? Where can they learn more about Sprinto's products?
Yeah, so at Sprinto, we are just at sprinto.com. Just give it a pay as a visit. I'm at Girish at sprinto.com. Feel free to drop me a line. Happy to talk to you about anything about SaaS sales. I happen to be doing that, or about SOC 2 or ISO or GDPR or HIPAA or CCP, whatever it is that's troubling you in your sales cycle. Happy to chat about that. Feel free to drop me a line.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Appreciate your thoughts. And
Thanks for having me, Jesse.